Hey, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Cinemacast right here on our channel, Arrow Entertainment. And if you're watching us also on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/ArrowENT, be sure to hit that follow, hit that like, hit that subscribe down below. And guys, if you want to follow us on any of our social media platforms or our Discord server, links for everything is right down below. Before we get into today, be sure you hit that like button if you guys enjoy our content, if you guys enjoy our podcast here, especially this one where we review movies and look over movies, especially mostly new ones that had just come out. So, today's feature, and this is going to be a very interesting one to me, because this one feels very much like deja vu. Today's feature is The Strangers Chapter 1. Now you're probably asking yourself, there's another Strangers movie out? Well, yes, there is another one. There has already been two of them, a matter of fact. And this is a film series, as it's called. You know, film series usually ends up being more than two films. The first film, The Strangers, which released in 2008, and then The Strangers Prey at Night, which released only 10 years later in 2018. Now, both of these movies, they are considered strong slasher horror thrillers. And I've seen both of them. And what I could say about both of these movies is they are pretty good. They're not Oscar worthy. They're not up there, you know, with the Oscar wars and nominees or whatever, you know, but you know, especially the first one, which really took America by storm, you know, which is considered a psychological horror film. And let's go over the history of these movies, and I will let you know how this current movie feels like deja vu. So, The Strangers, which came out in 2008, stars Liv Tyler. Now, this film follows a couple who stays at a vacation home, is disrupted by three masked intruders who infiltrate the home one night. This is the first installment of the film series, mind you. Now, the screenplay, what's interesting about the screenplay is it was inspired by two real-life events. Now, if you have never seen this movie, I would definitely recommend seeing it, because this has the edge-of-your-seat thrills. This is a movie that will definitely have you screaming at the screen, don't go over there, don't go over there, don't do that. You know, it's one of those. But what's interesting about The Strangers is that I guess you could say the story is really is kind of, you know, in a sense based on or inspired by some events that have happened in past history. One of them is the multiple homicide Manson family tape murders and a series of break-ins that occurred in the Bertino's, which is the director Brian Bertino's neighborhood as a child. Now, talking about the Manson family tape murders, if you don't know anything about that, if you are young, this is something you'll definitely love to listen into. This is something you'll definitely want to research into. Charles Manson, you know, he was one of those big cultists back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And he had a cult following. He had people who were following him. This guy was evil. He was. He led this group. And what's weird about it is Charles Manson, he never really even killed anybody. He's never really even committed any kind of murders. His followers, his people, his cult, they did the work for him. He was never there. He was like God to these people. His people were the ones that... Okay, so Sharon Tate, she was married to... what was his name? Roman Polanski, that's who it was. Sharon Tate, she was an actress, 1960s, and she was married to director Roman Polanski. Now, if you're not sure who Roman Polanski was, he was the director of the movie Rosemary's Baby in 1969. Now, talking about the tape murders real quick, because even though this review pertains to the movie The Strangers, but it is inspired by this. So just a look back on what inspired movies like this, okay? So on the night of August 8th, 1969, Tex Watson took Susan Atkins, Linda Kasabian, and Patricia Krawinkel to 10,050 Cello Drive in Benedict Canyon, Los Angeles, California. Watson claims Charles Manson had instructed him to go to the house and totally destroy everyone in it, and do it in as gruesome as you can. Manson told the women to do as Watson instructed. The occupants in the house on Cello Drive, and I may have butchered the name, that's how I'm pronouncing it, but please correct me in the comments if you guys are feeling the cringe. Yes, this is how I am pronouncing it. Cello Drive. Could be Cielo Drive. I don't know. The occupants in the house that evening were movie actress Sharon Tate, who was only 8.5 months pregnant, and the wife of director Roman Polanski. Her friend and former lover, Jay Sebring, a noted celebrity hairstylist. Polanski's friend, I don't even know how to pronounce this name. Frykowski? I'll just say the last name. And Frykowski's girlfriend, Abigail Folger, heiress to the Folgers coffee fortune and daughter of Peter Folger. Wow. So there's something right there. You got the actress who was married to a famous director. You got some hairstylist, and then you got somebody who was heiress to the Folgers coffee fortune. Wow. Also present on the property was William Garretson, the caretaker, and his friend Stephen Parent. Polanski was in Europe working on a film. Music producer Quincy Jones was a friend of Sebring who had planned to join him that evening but didn't go. Watson and the three women arrived on Cello Drive just past midnight on August 9th, 1969. Watson climbed a telephone pole near the entrance gate and cut the phone line to the house. The group backed their car to the bottom of the hill that led to the estate and walked back up the house. They thought the gate might be electrified or equipped with an alarm, so they climbed a brushy embankment to the right of the gate and entered the grounds. Headlights approached them from within the property, and Watson ordered the women to lie in the bushes. He stepped out and ordered the approaching car to halt. Stephen Parent had been visiting the property's caretaker, William Garretson, who lived in the guest house. Watson leveled a .22 caliber rifle at Parent, who begged him not to hurt him, claiming that he would do anything he said. Watson lunged at Parent with a knife, giving him a defensive slash wound on the palm of his hand that severed tendons and tore his watch off his wrist. And then he shot him 4 times in the chest and abdomen, killing him in the front seat of the white 1965 AMC Rambler. Watson next cut the screen of the window, then told Kasabian, I can't pronounce these names today, guys, to keep watch by the gate. Now, by this time, let's see, Watson removed the screen, entered through the window, and let Atkins and Krawinkel through the front door. He whispered to Atkins and woke Frykowski, who was sleeping in the living room couch. Watson kicked him in the head, and Frykowski asked him who he was and what he was doing. Watson replied, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's business." Where have I heard that phrase before? Oh, another good horror film, which was directed by Rob Zombie, The Devil's Rejects, where Otis, the character Otis, portrayed by Bill Moseley, he proclaimed in the movie, "I'm the devil, and I'm here to do the devil's work." So this is where that character or where Rob Zombie got the inspiration from, used that line in his movie. That's pretty cool. On Wants's direction, Atkins found the house houses 3 other occupants with Karankle's help and forced them into the living room. Now, I'm not going to go over the entire story of how they were murdered, but let's just say they were gruesomely murdered in this house. And this was a random house that they picked. This wasn't a target. These people were not targeted by this group. This was a random attack on this house. They didn't know who these people were. They broke in. They just did their thing, and it was very gruesome. There's also a movie out there that's based on the life of Charles Manson and all of this. It's called Helter Skelter. Another good movie to take a look at, too. So now we go back to The Strangers. And yes, this movie is kind of based off of it. It's very inspired by it. I guess you could say this movie was inspired by true events, okay? And then, of course, a series of break-ins that occurred in the neighborhood of the director, Brian Bortino, as he was a child. Some journalists noticed similarities between the film and the Ketty cabin murders that occurred in Ketty, California in 1981, though Bertino did not cite this as a reference. Now, in the years since its release, this movie has become a cult following. And then, of course, the sequel released in March of 2018, then followed by a standalone sequel trilogy of Strangers films. That's right, this is the first of a trilogy that is being released. This is Chapter 1. Now, the second one follows a family who's taking a vacation, and of course, the campgrounds or the area that they're in, they're stalked by these killers, and they're being chased by these killers. And 2 of them that are being chased by these killers are young teenagers. So yes, you got a horror movie where young children, well, teenagers, but I still consider them children, they're in danger of these same people. And that's where I guess the intensity of the movie comes into play. It's like when kids are really in danger, when you endanger children in a horror movie like this, that really adds to the fear factor. It really adds to the thrills and intensity of a movie. Now, this movie, the first movie, you got 2 characters who arrive at an isolated childhood summer home after attending a wedding. The couple is distraught after the woman Karen turned down James's marriage proposal. James calls his best friend Mike and asks him to pick him up in the morning. The couple attempt to have sex, but they are interrupted by a knock at the door. The answer to find a young woman asking for someone named Tamara and ask if she is home. The character James dismisses her and then builds a fire for Kristen. James goes out to purchase cigarettes for Kristen. The woman from earlier returns, asking the same question. Now, the plot of The Strangers is you have one of the persons in question who's wearing a mask, and it's going to be, yes, a teenager, a young woman, asking about this woman, Tamara. And this is only a distraction to this couple, or at least the woman who's at home alone right now. All the meanwhile, this is distracting her. The other ones are finding their way into the house, and she don't know about it, but she knows from little things that happen, little sounds, knocks, things that happen around the house. She knows that somebody's inside. And then the husband comes home, boyfriend comes home in this case. She tells him what's going on. Then they realize they are under attack. There's somebody in the house. So then it turns into a night of cat and mouse play, where you got this couple that is trying to survive and evade this triplet of murderers. And all the meanwhile, now, I hate to spoil the first movie for you guys. If you don't want the spoiler for the first movie, you could do one of 2 things. You can pause this review now, stop this review now, go watch the first two and then come back, or skip ahead about 20 seconds. So here we go. The first movie, it's a cat and mouse game. Then they're pretty much subdued and caught within the last 5-10 minutes of the movie. Tied up in the living room, sitting there, begging there for their life, while this triplet stands around them. The woman then asks, "Why are you doing this?" The young girl replies, "Because you were home." And what follows is this triplet ends up killing off this couple, leaving them to die. And then they leave. They take off before the police get there. You never know who these people are. You never see their faces. You may hear their voices, but all you see are these masks and this potato sack over the main one, who is a guy. So that is the first Strangers, and of course I already mentioned about the second one. You know, it's like they're on vacation, they're at a camp or something. I forgot what it was, and they're being chased down by the same people. This is a random attack. So that's all these people do. They just find targets to attack, no rhyme or reason. So then comes along Chapter 1. Now, what happened to Prey at Night? Why wasn't there a direct sequel to Prey at Night? Well, let's see. I mean, it did get a 40% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, and you guys know how I feel about it. This movie, it received a positive reviews, mostly positive reviews from fans of the genre. Bloody Disgusting gave the film a positive review, saying The Strangers Prey at Night really takes The Strangers to the next level and serves as a perfect introduction to The Strangers for new horror fans. You can go back and watch The Strangers and be happy with the previous relentless onslaughts. But I'm trying to figure out, where did they go wrong? Like, why didn't they continue with this? It doesn't make no sense to me. But now we got The Strangers Chapter 1. Now this movie, when I said this is like deja vu, it strongly reeks of deja vu, with a few subtle differences, you know, within the movie, but it actually follows the same formula as The Strangers, the first movie. Now, I may get into some spoilers here for you guys. Like I said, go check the movie out, come back and listen to the review. If not, let's continue. So, the only difference, the only major difference with this is there's two different characters, two different names, of course. They're driving across country, celebrating their 5-year anniversary. They end up lost in this, and they stop in this small town in Oregon called Venus. The locals disturb them, and their car breaks down. The town's mechanic, Rudy, agrees to fix the car, and the next morning they are agree to fix the car the next morning, and they are forced to stay in an Airbnb house nearby. Now, seeing a handful of movies, horror movies, and whenever somebody mentions Airbnb, which is basically a rental home, somebody buys a home and they rent it out to somebody as like a motel, sort of. You know, you can rent it out for like $200-300 a night to stay there. You know, it's a whole home. You know, you got access to everything. But why do I feel like with Airbnb, I feel like if I were to do something like that, I'd be like, fuck no, I'll stay at a motel, because Airbnbs, something is always going to happen with one of those houses. You're going to have somebody who's going to fucking kill you on their own property. That's all I got to say about that. But yeah, they end up staying at this Airbnb, and they're making the best of it. And of course, while they're both at home, you know, they attempt to have sex, of course, following the same plot line as the first movie. Then there's a knock on the door. They answer, and it's this young woman in the shadows, you know, and you already know what's going to happen. And she asks for the same person, same name. Is Tamara home? And then they respond, no. But then, of course, you know, the girl ends up disappearing a little bit, but she stays in the shadows. So then they thought they heard the last of her, and the boyfriend, he decides he's going to run into town and get a few things, you know, and bring them back. All the meanwhile, the girl's left at home, and she has the encounter with the young woman again, and again she tells him no. So then she starts experiencing things in the house that are happening, and she knows there's somebody in the house, and she's too terrified to encounter him. You know, she doesn't know what to do. She tries to call the police, but somebody in the house ends up stealing her phone, hiding her phone. So this is a movie, and I don't really have to go through the entire plot. If you've seen The Strangers, if you've seen the first one, that's basically what this movie is. Scene for scene. Just different actors, different characters. Even the main guy. His mask is a little bit different, but you still don't see anybody's face. And everything is just it's just basically a copy. It's copy and paste from here on out. You got the young girl in the mask who asks if Tamara is home, and then, you know, even in the end, all the way up into the end scene, couple's knocked out, tied up in the living room, give their last goodbyes to each other, or I love yous, or whatever, and the girl asks in tears, "Why are you doing this?" And the young girl replies, "Because you were home." So, The Strangers Chapter 1, I feel, is like a reboot in a sense, to create a whole new trilogy to try something new and fresh. And this movie here is definitely nothing new and fresh about it. In fact, it's basically recycled. That's all this movie, it's recycled from the first movie. Now, for those who have never seen The Strangers or Prey at Night, this could be something fresh and new for you, and you may end up liking it. You may end up saying, hey, this is actually pretty damn scary. However, when you look at the reviews online, this movie got a 22% from Rotten Tomatoes. And the website's consensus reads, lacking the chilling suspense of the original Strangers and proving it just to be unpleasant. This chapter 1 closes the book on itself. Even Mark Olson of the Los Angeles Times said the first Strangers movie had an air of creepy suspense as the besieged couple often looked off into blank space, bringing the unnerving tension to what was often nothing. This new film never conjures the same feelings of rustic menace. Yeah, because this movie is basically a copy and paste. It's taking what made the first one so good. It's literally taken the script, the story, the way the first one was laid out, and redid it in a new vision, and it falls short. Now, sequel-wise, and I already said this was supposed to be a trilogy. 2 sequels were filmed concurrently with Chapter 1, with Chapter 2 expected to release at the late 2024. So, we already had this movie, Chapter 1. It's already released. It released this past May 17th, 2024, and they're already releasing a second chapter at the end of the year. So this is getting the Matrix, what do you call it? I'm thinking of the word. I can't think of the word for it, but you guys know what I mean. It's getting the Matrix treatment. That's what I want to call it. It's getting the Matrix treatment. Remember when the Matrix Reloaded and Revelations came out? They were both shot as one whole movie, released back to back within the same year. You had Reloaded that released early in the year, and Revelations released later in the year. That's what's happening here. Now, Harlan stated that they were intended to be neither a remake or reboot, and that the tone was going to be close to the first film. Harlan said in an interview, "We of course shot them on top of each other and mixed up, like movies are always made, but we had to keep it in mind that this is one story arc. It is a 4.5-hour movie. And the first movie is the first act. It sets up the characters and the terror and the killers and our main character who will survive the first movie, but then go on a journey in the next two." So, that being said, turning all three of these movies into like a 4.5-hour marathon of a movie. Wow. And then they're saying that it's not intended to be a remake or a reboot, but yet when you watch this movie, it feels very much like the first one, even when they said that the tone is going to be close to the first film. However, it's not really just the tone that is close to the first film. This movie basically is the first film. It basically is the first film. If you've seen The Strangers in 2008, then you should know what you're going to be looking for in this movie here. It's literally the same thing. That's all it is. And was I impressed by it? Yes, I mean, a little bit. I was expecting a little more out of it. I went into it thinking, it's a whole new movie. Let's see where they go with this. They're basically rebooting it. But when I'm watching it, and I'm seeing a lot of similarities going on, and I'm like, this is the first movie. But I did watch it. I did watch it in full, and I'm like, okay, the woman in this movie, however, as opposed to the original, the woman at the end of this movie ends up surviving somehow, ends up in the hospital. But then there's a scene where the guy who stabbed her and stabbed her boyfriend, he's there with her. So I don't know if this movie's going to try to go along the lines of being like something like the movie, A Quiet Place. But I think that's becoming the tone of horror movies nowadays. Like, you got A Quiet Place, it's just like part 1, part 2, part 3. Let's see where this goes. But I think like a movie like this, it should not get a treatment like this. It really shouldn't. And I've seen the failure of what these type of trio of movies can do and what they have done. Take a look at David Gordon Green's Halloween. Alright, 40 years later, he did Halloween in 2018. That movie to me felt short. It fell short of what I guess he was aiming for it to be. But he was turning it into a trilogy, and then Halloween Kills comes out, and it was just fucking ridiculous. Especially with the violence. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love violence in a horror movie. I love the gore, love the slashing and all. But it's like, that's all they made it out to be. It's like a fucking gore fest. That's all it was. It was more about the kills than it was the story. The story was actually absolutely ridiculous. And then Halloween Ends. That I don't even know what the fuck that mess was. That should have been just fucking thrown in a fire. Just burned to fucking death before even releasing. And then the Exorcist movies, they released The Exorcist, the newest one. That was a bomb. So they decided to cut ties with David Gordon Green. He dropped out from the project. It was going to be a trilogy, but look where that ended up. So now you got The Strangers is trying to do a trilogy, trying to do something different, trying to do something new and original in a sense, but this kind of thing has been done before with trilogies. Back to the Future, The Matrix, any other movie that's been a trilogy of things to come, shot back to back to back, that kind of thing. And this is one trilogy that I think it's going to plummet itself when the sequel comes out later this year, to the point where I don't know if they're filming the whole thing and they got it all situated and set to go. In a sense, like in an interview with the Hollywood Reporter, Harlan stated that chapter 2 and 3 will go in different directions. The sequels will cover Patch's character over a span of 4 days after her character. Okay, so 3 movies is going to take place within a 4-day period. And the other 2 chapters are going to go in different directions. So I see that this is definitely going to be a big implosion of this film series. I don't even want to call it a franchise at this point, because it's going to be only 5 movies, but this is definitely going to be an implosion on itself. Now, if you've never seen the original and you went into this is basically a fresh, whole new look for you guys, so you're not really missing anything. But what do you guys think about The Strangers Chapter 1? I personally thought it was meh. I did not think it was great. I didn't think it was good. They could have done better. It could have been something different. I don't know why they felt like they needed to reboot it in a sense, which is basically what it is. It's a reboot. That's basically what it is. And for this movie to be an exact copy, of the first one, like that just shows me that you guys really didn't have an original idea for this. You went in, you said, oh, it's not a remake, it's not. Okay, then Prometheus was an Alien movie. Even though they said Prometheus takes place in the universe of Alien, it's not a sequel. It's not a prequel to the Alien franchise. But then after the next movie comes out, and oh my god, Prometheus is a fucking prequel to Alien. Several hundred years later. What a fucking coincidence. Like I said, things have been done before. So now, this director, well, what was his name? Rennie Harlin. Yeah, Rennie Harlin. What movies has this guy done? Okay. Alright, he has some movies under his belt that I've seen that I like. Okay. He's done Nightmare on Elm Street 4 Dream Master. Okay, he was director of that. He directed Die Hard 2. Nice. Okay. Cliffhanger, another really good movie. Sylvester Stallone. Anybody who's a fan of Samuel L. Jackson, The Long Kiss Goodnight, Blast from the Past, that was a Brendan Fraser movie. Deep Blue Sea. Oh, he directed Exorcist: The Beginning. Oh, how interesting. 12 Rounds. Oh, that garbage with John Cena. Okay, that about tears it with me. And a whole bunch of other movies that I've never heard of or never seen. But there's quite a few movies here or there, that he's done. So I'm like, okay. Oh, look, he was a Golden Raspberry Award winner for 6 movies. The Adventures of Ford Fairlane, Cutthroat Island, Driven. Oh, that was another Stallone movie. Exorcist: The Beginning, The Legend of Hercules, and The Misfits. He's a 6-time Golden Raspberry Award winner. He might as well be a 7th one for this movie right here. How amazing is that? But, what are your guys' thoughts on this movie? The Strangers Chapter 1. Did you guys see it? Did you guys like it? Did you enjoy it? What'd you think about it? Let us know down in the comment section. My final grade on this movie: it could have been better. It should have been better. It should have been something a little more different than just a copy and paste movie. I give Strangers Chapter 1 a 5 out of 10. That's the best I can do, is a 5 out of 10. It's a half and half. It's, I go into it, it's like, I like it, but then I don't like it. I may not watch it again. Even if I do, I already know what's going to happen, because I went into this movie, watching it. I'm like, okay, this is following a trend. It's definitely the first movie, so I've already seen it. It's been deja vu for me. Just different characters, just a little bit different of a storyline. So yeah, that's this movie, The Strangers Chapter 1. So guys, did you enjoy today's episode of Cinemacast? Did you see this movie? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments section. We definitely thank you guys for checking out this podcast series and all of our other videos. our blog and videos, our podcast, and such. If you guys have yet to do so, if you made it this far, hit that like, subscribe button down below. And until next time, we'll catch you right back here at the cinema.